Good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of Doctor to Doctor in the chat room. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Shaw, and I am here with my guest, Mr. Kevin Phipps and Mr. Greg Williamson, and we're going to talk about domestic violence, and we're going to look at it from the male perspective, from the abuser and the victim's perspectives. Before we get into the questions, I'd like for these young men to introduce themselves. But first, I'd like to say thank you and welcome. I appreciate you guys being here with me
You're
today.
welcome.
And if you would just tell us a little bit about who you are and give us a little bit about your background, please.
My name is Kevin Phipps. I have a background in teaching domestic violence for men and women. I did that for over 15 years.
Okay.
Currently, I'm a Director of Community Outreach Public Information Office with the Shelby County Criminal Court Clerk. So that is my current position at this time.
Okay.
Greg Williamson. I am co-founder of an organization called Circle of Life Transformation Center, which is a domestic violence felon reentry program. What I do, I currently teach behavior modification, so to speak, to abusers at the prison. We are about to start teaching to women abusers in the women's side of the prison, as well as we're about to start. We're in partnership with Division 5, which is Judge Landon's courtroom, which he's taken over the domestic violence courtroom in the circuit pod. Is that right? Circuit pod? Criminal court pod.
Okay.
Where we're going to be dealing with the people, the abusers who have been put on probation. So it's a good journey. I love doing what I do to try and cut back on some of the recidivism of this plague of domestic violence that we have in our city.
Yeah. So that said, I want to talk about first the different forms that domestic violence can take, because I think I had Miss Gwen Turner a couple weeks ago, and we heard it from the female perspective, but I think people usually think about it from the female perspective, and so, but we know that's not the only form of domestic violence, and that men experience it as well, and that it can be from heterosexual relationships, it can be from same-sex relationships, and so I just want you guys to talk about, just either one of you just jump in and let's talk about the different forms that it takes.
Well, domestic violence first and foremost, it starts off with being what we call verbal. Verbal abuse is one. And then it escalates to a physical abuse, and sometimes it goes from physical to verbal. So those are the two forms that verbal and physical abuse. And when we say verbal abuse, you could beat a person down and mentally just tear them down, and there's self-esteem and beat them down. So and dealing with the perpetrators of domestic violence, teaching my group, most cases it start off being verbal, and then that's what we call power and control, because once they get that, that's how they control the victim. And it could be economic abuse, physical abuse, isolation, and numerous of things.
How would you say the forms differ, if any, with men versus women?
Well, I would say that it differs due to the circumstances. But literally, it could be both parties. The woman could be the breadwinner in the family, and she could be the controlling one because she's the breadwinner of the family. And it's easy for when the patriarchy of society says that the man is supposed to be the head, and he's supposed to be this, he's supposed to be that, and he's not living up to that role that society says he is, then that will make a guy have low self-esteem about himself. And if he has a woman that's a dominant spirit, and she's the breadwinner, then it's easily for him to fall into being abused financially, mentally, and sometimes physically, because as me and Kevin, we both know by being men, you don't often hear men report domestic violence, especially when they're the ones who are being abused in a physical way. It doesn't allow him to have that male bravado about himself if he's getting physically abused by his woman.
And then that's a shame, because you're not gonna have no man that feel like if I got to call the police and I'm being abused, and I've even heard police say when they come to the house, you know, if the man was to make the call and they come to the house and they're like, so why you calling? You couldn't control the situation. That's what it looked. And then until recently, there was only one male shelter in California, because when men, if they make the call, you know, it's easy, but they say it's easy for us to go sleep on one of their partner's couch. Wow. Yeah, and that's the theory that they had, that because about 10 years ago, I did some research. There was only one shelter for men, and it was in California. And the theory was that if a man is categorized as a victim, it's easy for him to pack his bag and go stay with somebody else, as opposed to a female. You know, different situations. So, and they really hadn't now it's being more recognized as men being victims. And then you got the same sex where you had, you know, two men. So that has escalated when you got two men and two women, you know. So that has escalated. So you have to look at it from a perspective, because it was always thought of as the woman being the victim. But you got men, you got children. So abuse, and then, you know, also here in Shelby County, elderly abuse is on the rise.
Wow.
So, you know, like I told you before, I've been on both ends of it, and now because of the work that we do, I'm a single man, so I have to be careful with the kind of women that I date, and I've run across women who have been in abusive relationships and have that mentality that I'm gonna get him before he get me, and I'm just gonna let me just be frank with you, audience. I'm calling the police. I have no problem dialing 911 when a woman is aggressive like that, because I'm not finna lose everything that I have worked so hard for over a brief moment of anger. So if I tell you that it's time for me and you to separate, you go your way, I go mine, then if you choose to try and get physical to try and push me into a position where I'm finna get physical back with you, then I have no choice. I'm dialing 911. And I don't feel less than no man, audience, for dialing 911, because I'm not going to jail. Period.
I'm with you on that. Yeah. I've been on that end where I've been in a relationship and I've been the victim. Call the police. You know, it was verbal.
So, okay. So I want you to talk about that in a second. So I want to come back to that. Okay. But you mentioned, you know, about being in this work or whatever. So, what moved you into, you know, with what you've experienced or whatever? How did you decide, you know what, I should get into this and try to see if I can help people that are in, you know, experiencing domestic violence?
Both me and Kevin are ministers.
Okay.
So my journey came through God.
Okay.
I had that God intervention in my life where when I met my business partner, Miss Odom, like I told you, that we sat down and we was having lunch, and just so happened the conversation led to the point where it came out that she was a victim, and then I was an abuser as well as a victim. I was both. And I guess at that point in time, when we were sitting at that table, it was like God gave both of us an epiphany at the same exact time. Wow. So I pulled out a pen and got some napkins, and we wrote out the whole program right there at the table. And we both knew that we wanted to be a help, a positive force in the community. So, you know, it was like God just happened to place me at certain places, and I've never been one to shy away from talking about anything that has happened in my life because
Yeah.
I have no problem with understanding that the past is the past.
Yes.
But when you have God rooted in your foundation, we know that anybody that follows God and are believers of the Bible know that God used the most sinners that he could find
That's
to
right.
get the word across.
Yeah.
I just so happen to be one of those sinners that he grabbed and used. Now, mind you, me being a minister was the last thing on my mind that I would eventually be.
Yeah.
But when you get to a point where things God just keep putting stuff in front of you and in front of you, you know, it just come a time when you just have to say, I surrender.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes,
and
God.
That's true.
I surrender, and I just told God, if this is what you have for me to do, then give me the knowledge and wisdom to be a vessel for you to be able to use the experiences that I've been doing in my life to be able to help others recognize that this is a learned behavior.
Yes.
This isn't something that we was born with. This was something that we learned. And like I mentioned to you, I grew up on a prostitution corner. So I learned all of these things from a young man growing up, seeing those things. And when I came of age, those things came out because I wasn't seeing a whole lot of police calls.
Yeah.
You know, when there is no reprimand of your actions, then you're going to believe that you can get away with these things.
Yeah.
And a lot of abusers, and I'm sure Kevin has heard these stories himself.
Yeah.
If you're never being held accountable for these things,
That's
then
true.
you're going to start forming the things that you feel that you can get away with the women that you date.
And that's just like a normal function for the abuser. That's the way they look at it. This is where you function. And like I said, I dealt with abusers, men and women. And when I dealt with on the men's side is that's the way they saw in their household. You know, that's how, you know, that's how daddy, boyfriend, whoever was the male in the household.
Yeah.
That's the way he handled the situation. And then even with the flip side on the women, because, you know, like I said, they dominant. I'm the breadwinner. You gonna do as I say. And so that's that control. We always talk about that power and that control issue.
Now just think about this, okay? You an abuser. You know you got the propensity for your attitude to go from 0 to 10 in a split second. Okay, what happens when you meet that woman who has grown up in a household where the women go from 0 to 10 in a split second? You and her get together. What you got?
Yeah.
You got dynamite.
Yeah.
You got an explosion because you got to understand now, all women ain't finna be susceptible to you abusing them. You got some women now that's going to, you know, I tell guys, especially in the prison, that what you think your woman is doing while you sitting in this cell?
Yeah.
They going to the gun range.
Yeah.
They learning how to protect themselves. So while you sitting in here, don't think that you finna get out and she gonna be that same woman when you get out to where you can go right back into that, because we're seeing it play out on TV every day now. You got murder suicides going on now.
That's true.
You got women have gotten to the point where they have gotten sick and tired of being sick and tired of taking that abuse, and they're killing their abusers.
Yeah.
So you got so many different gambits of how these things can play out.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, like I told you before, abusers is like a hungry lion going to and fro, searching for who he can get with, that he can get away with those things
And
with,
start to grow.
and start to groom them and get to a point where, because if he's the kind of guy that has his experiences coming up and his examples have been men controlling, then this is what he's going to do.
Okay, hold that thought. And we're going to go to break, and we'll be right back on 94.7 FM, The Gospel Giant, and we're going to talk more about domestic violence from the male perspective, and maybe we'll start with you, and we'll talk a little bit about being the victim.
Okay.
And we'll be right back, 94.7 FM.